It's been weeks since I've been in the studio. There's been snow, there's been schlepping, there's been everything. But I'm back, baby. I'm back with some big news out of the Big East. I'm back with some fresh wings, and I've got some words for you at the top. This is only February. I've got 3 more. This is Stuffed.
This is March. Chicken vodka wrap is to die for.
Welcome to Stuff with Jon Rothstein, best player you don't know in college basketball.
We have a very high bar on the show. If I let myself go, I'd be 400 pounds. I just want to make sure I don't go all in on chocolate chip pancakes at the diner down the street.
Forget about not sleeping until May. I may not sleep at all, but I wouldn't trade it for anything else. College hoops. Everything else is just secondary.
Who's ready to nosh? Welcome to Stuffed with Jon Rothstein. I can't tell you how excited I am to be back in studio after blizzard, topped by cold ice time and time again, has swept the metropolitan area the last couple of weeks. But we have an outstanding show lined up for you today. In just a couple minutes, we are going to hear from USC head coach Andy Enfield. Trojans off to their best start since the early 90s. They are right now the team to beat in the Pac-12. But first, we want to get to some big picture storylines in college basketball in a New York minute. We start with some fresh news hot off the press. According to a well-embedded mole that I corresponded with prior to the show, UConn star guard James Bouknight has been cleared to play. He has been out the last couple of weeks due to an elbow injury. This is a huge development, not just in the Big East, but also nationally. Before getting injured, Bouknight was an All-American candidate, averaging just over 20 points and 5 rebounds a game. UConn will play Providence tonight at Gamble Pavilion, and ironically enough, our guest, Andy Enfield, coached against James Bouknight in an early season matchup earlier this year when UConn played USC. There was some big news out of Duke on Monday night when it was announced that Jalen Johnson, Duke's star freshman, has decided to no longer participate in the remainder of the 2021 college basketball season and will instead prepare for the NBA draft. Jalen Johnson has every right to do whatever he wants to do with his life. If he wants to prepare for the next level, that's his prerogative, and he deserves the right to make that choice. But with that said, Duke was coming off its best performance of the season over the weekend at NC State in a game which the Blue Devils dominated the Wolfpack, and Jalen Johnson, as we've seen in the last 2 games, has had his minutes significantly reduced. And again, we can use whatever term we want, but the facts are the facts. This young man decided to put his own personal interests above his teammates, the program that he plays for, and ultimately, he quit college basketball this year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But let's not dress this up with other terms or labels. Jalen Johnson, and again, there's nothing wrong with this, opted to quit Duke basketball, and we and everybody else should wish him well in future endeavors. Now, staying in the ACC, there was a major development on Monday night as Florida State sent a major statement with a dominant victory over Virginia in a game that was being billed as the game of the year in that conference. And the amazing thing to me, the Seminoles, who also have a highly touted freshman in Scotty Barnes, are now getting a big lift from that player, Scotty Barnes, in reserve. And Florida State's balance, tenacity, and overall depth give it an outstanding opportunity, in my opinion, to finally crack through and get to a Final Four under Leonard Hamilton. And speaking of Leonard Hamilton, if you've coached as long as he's coached and you've had the success that he's had, you have to have some pretty good assistants. And one of them now joins us on Stuff as we go to the West Coast to bring in USC head coach Andy Enfield. And Andy, we'll start there. You were an assistant under Leonard Hamilton for a long time at Florida State. What's the biggest things that you took from Coach Hamilton that you now apply at USC?
Well, Coach Hamilton's a Hall of Fame coach. He's one of the nicest men I've ever been around, and he runs a great program. And that's what I learned, how to run a basketball program at the Division I high major level. And he does it better than anybody I've ever seen. So congratulations to Coach Hamilton, Florida State. They've had just an unbelievable run here the last decade, and I was fortunate enough to spend 5 years in Tallahassee with him.
Well, now, Andy, obviously you're going to learn things from Leonard Hamilton and apply them to USC, but history has shown that you're pretty intelligent in your own right. A lot of people may not know this, but Andy Enfield was his high school valedictorian. All these years later, where does that rank on your mantle of accomplishments?
Well, high school was so long ago, I forgot about that, but I appreciate you reminding me. Those are good old days from Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. We're so focused right now during the season, you kind of lose track of what happened in the past. And right now, our focus is our next game tomorrow
Well, and
night.
obviously your focus is only going to intensify when you win 17 of your first 20 games. What do you think are the biggest reasons behind such a strong start for USC this season?
We lost 80% of our scoring and rebounding last year. We had a very good team last year. We were 22-9, playing great basketball at the end before the pandemic shut us down. But our assistant coaches had to revamp the entire roster. We only had 3 returnees. So to bring in 3 graduate transfers, 2 undergraduate transfers, 2 freshmen, we had a whole new team. And I give our players a lot of credit, our assistant coaches a ton of credit for just acclimating everybody together and buying into the team concept. Our defense has been outstanding all season, and our offense is getting there. It's really been a true team this year. And whenever we defend at the level that we have been, we have a chance to win every game we play.
You know, Andy, you mentioned obviously the fact that you brought in so many transfers. You know, this in a lot of ways feels like where college basketball is going in terms of recalibrating rosters. I'm curious, when did you make the decision in the offseason last year that that's how you're going to retool this roster?
We had no choice, John. We had a few players left our program. They transferred out. So we had held spots for them to come back. And then when they left, we had no choice. We had to revamp our whole roster. So it became a necessity. We had to go, and we were very fortunate. We were able to recruit in the pandemic, and the players that we signed in the spring had never even been to USC on campus, and we had never met them in person. So the Zoom calls, my wife told me to buy Zoom stock, and like an idiot, I didn't, because the Zoom calls really helped us recruit nationally.
Well, and it's interesting to me, you know, I know you've had so many guys plug the holes for you as transfers, but Taji Toney hasn't really just plugged holes. He has been a revelation, a grad transfer from Santa Clara. And I've studied this closely. Very rarely do players who put up certain numbers in a mid-major conference replicate the same type of output when they go to a power conference. Taji Toney has superseded what he did last year at Santa Clara, now at USC. How has he done that?
Taji is just a terrific basketball player. He had 29 points on Saturday at Washington State, helped us win that game. And he's been so solid all season. He's got a very good assist-to-turnover ratio. He scores it when he has to, and he doesn't get sped up. He's just been a terrific offense player, but his defense has improved dramatically as well. So we would not be 17-3 without Taji Toney.
Well, we've spent some time on the transfers. I think it's time now to pay attention to, obviously, some of the other players that you brought in traditionally. And we start with Evan Mobley, who has already established himself as not just one of the best freshmen in the country, but one of the best players in the country. You've had so many great post players during your time at USC, Onyeka Okongwu and Chimezie Metu. How does Evan Mobley compare to those guys who preceded him?
They're all different, John. Each one of them are NBA players. Chimezie plays for the Kings. Onyeka obviously was a 6th pick in the draft last year for Atlanta Hawks. And Evan will be a high pick this year. But they're all different. They're all talented, but they have a lot of similarities. They're very hard workers, and they have no ego. Evan Mobley's all about winning games. He doesn't care about scoring points. He's a terrific, unselfish passer, and he's a great defender right now. He's really improved in that area. So the Evan Mobley, he has become a go-to guy on our offense. We can isolate him in certain situations, and he's learned quickly how to beat double teams and also when to pass out of double teams at the right time. So he went through a huge learning curve quickly because he was the focal point of our offense and the focal point of our defenses. And now that they scout him, he's done a great job adjusting to the physicality and the scouting reports of the opposing teams.
And a lot of the times, Andy, you know, the guy that he's passing to when he goes out of the double team is his brother Isaiah, who probably doesn't get the attention that he deserves, but is a very good player in the Pac-12. How would you describe the chemistry between those two on both sides of the floor up front?
They have great chemistry on and off the court. Isaiah's our best defender, our best big man defender, and that says a lot because he can switch out on guards. He can guard bigger guys, and to have Isaiah guarding people and then Evan there for the shot block has really helped our team defense. On offense, they pass the ball extremely well together, but they also pass the ball to everybody. Isaiah is just as unselfish as his brother Evan. So when you have two unselfish, skilled bigs, it really helps on the offensive end.
You know, Andy, I look at your league and your conference, and we've had many talks about this. You know, the Pac-12 has great players, it's got great coaches, it's got unbelievable brands, but the league does not get the attention nor the respect that it deserves nationally. How does this conference continue to improve its standing in the eyes of the college basketball world?
Well, it's very difficult, John, because of the time difference. It's a 3-hour time difference for the East Coast. And like last year, we had 10 draft picks, NBA draft picks out of the 60 in the NBA draft. And some teams had multiple draft picks last year. We had one. So we continually put players in the NBA. I think we're second behind the ACC, and they have more teams in the conference than us over the last 15 years. So this league has outstanding basketball players, very good teams. And I think the time difference is the biggest thing, the amount of exposure. When I hear things like, well, Onyeka Kong or Evan Mobley, they're going unnoticed. Well, what does that mean? Because Evan Mobley is going to be a top high pick in the NBA draft.
Right.
And the fact that not enough people see him, maybe that's what they mean. But it's really frustrating at times. But at the same time, it is business. We have 7 or 8 p.m. game times out here that start at 10, 11 on the East Coast. Well, I can't expect someone to stay up until 1 in the morning to watch college basketball game, because I would have been in bed a long time ago. So I think a lot of it has to do of just the West Coast. I think if we were on the East Coast in the major time zone in the major markets, although Los Angeles is the biggest basketball market in the country, it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of the country to stay up late at night and watch our games.
Well, as an East Coaster who lives in New York, I can tell you that I've suffered from insomnia the past couple of years staying up to watch the Pac-12. But you're right. You know, people have said, and you can relate to this because you lived in New York once, that the only clock that matters is the one in Grand Central Station. And about 8 years ago, when people were passing through Grand Central Station, they were picking up newspapers all over the country and reading about this young upstart coach at Florida Gulf Coast who led his team to the Sweet 16. That was before you took the USC job, and that was you. That was your breakthrough in this business. I'm curious, especially with the caliber of teams you had over the past couple of years at USC, how often does Andy Enfield, whether he's going for a run in Manhattan Beach or walking his dogs, think about going on another deep NCAA tournament run to the second weekend or beyond?
It's a goal of any team, especially our teams at USC. We've been to multiple NCAA tournaments here. We've had some excellent basketball players. Last year we had a great team, and we're cut short, didn't get that opportunity, so that really fueled some of the returnees to try to get back there and have a chance, and hopefully we will have a chance this year. But the NCAA tournament it's a one game and you're done, so you have to win and move on, or you lose or go home. So it's the most exciting time of the year, and our players want to be a part of that this year, and hopefully if we can finish strong, we'll have that chance.
You came very close to getting to the second weekend a couple of years ago when you lost to Baylor. You're in position right now to earn a very high seed in the NCAA tournament. From your perspective, what are the biggest keys over the next 3 or 4 weeks to improve on so USC can be in position to again be a team that's a high seed and make a run in the NCAA tournament?
Well, first we have to defend at the level we're defending at it, and we have to keep that intensity every game. We understand our league is very good this year, and any team can beat us. And then once we get into postseason, once we get into postseason, one game can make it. One game, if you don't defend at that level, you could be out. So that we hang our hat on defense right now, and then offense, we have to be able to make shots. The 3 losses we've had, our offense bogged down. We were without our starting point guard, Ethan Anderson. Early in the year, he missed 6 weeks, and that really hurt us offensively. But now he's back, and we're playing at a much better level offensively.
No, you definitely are. And Andy, the one thing I've always enjoyed about visiting with you is you can talk basketball, but you can also talk life and culture. And I know that before you went into basketball full-time, you lived in New York. You worked, obviously, in the information technology world. You always reference a place in California, Valentino's, that you go to when you need a good slice. I'm curious, though, if you could get a slice there or a slice at your favorite haunt on the Upper West Side, what would you buy it for?
Well, that's a tough call. I saw your opening to your show, and it looked some very good food. It actually made me hungry. And New York has the best pizza, but I have to give the nod to Valentino's Pizza in Manhattan Beach. They have New York-style pizza, just outstanding. Just had it last night, actually, John.
How many slices do you go for in a sitting?
I usually eat 2 or 3, depending on if I work out in the morning, I'll eat 3. If I don't, usually 2.
Self-restraint, that's why you're so skinny. All right, final thing. We touched on pizza. We touched on the Pac-12 and your basketball team. But as you can tell, food is a big part of this show. If Andy Enfield could have one meal, one place, what would it be? Where would it be?
Well, pizza's always been my favorite, so I'm going to stick with Valentino's Pizza right here at home.
Okay, all right. Simplicity sometimes is the key to life. Well, Andy, we appreciate a couple minutes. Congratulations on an outstanding start, and look forward to staying connected with you along the way.
Thank you. Take care, John. Thank you.
All right, you got it. That's USC head coach Andy Enfield. Trojans will host Arizona State on Wednesday night at the Galen Center. And March Madness can be a hairy situation, but it doesn't have to be. The secret to success is being smooth. How do you become smooth? One word, America, Manscaped. The Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0 has skin-safe technology, so you never cut yourself. You don't want to wind up like Ben Stiller in There's Something About Mary, cutting your Frank or your beans. What a great movie, circa 1998. The razor has a headlight and it's even waterproof, so you can do this anytime, anywhere. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code STUFFED for 20% off and free shipping. That's right, 20% off and free shipping by using the code STUFFED. That's STUFFED. Now we're going to get to our portion of the show where we do a little bit of schmoozing. I do a little bit of eating. We're going to take your questions from social media in a second. Nothing like some nice fresh wings on a chilly, gray Tuesday. We got college hoops coming up in a couple hours. Oh, that's a good wing right there. Not as good as Bar Coastal on 78th and 1st, but really good. Went a little deep on the Super Bowl order this year. Had about 15 or 20. Back in my day, I was good for 30 or 40 wings in one setting. Hard to believe right now. We are just 3.5 weeks from Selection Sunday. People are getting excited. I'm getting excited. But there's one thing I want to point out. I think, and I know, that the net, the metric that the NCAA has used to replace the RPI when selecting the NCAA tournament, is seriously flawed. I was studying it this morning, and I came across two teams from Conference USA. Western Kentucky and Marshall. Western Kentucky was 7 points lower on the net than Marshall. I believe Western Kentucky was 75, Marshall was 68. And Western Kentucky had a road win against Alabama and went on the road and beat Marshall twice already this season on the road. And another thing, how can you weight games this year, road, home, and neutral, when fans are sporadic in the stands due to COVID-19? You want to take one thing home from today? The net is flawed. Now let's get to our social media portion of the program that we call Don't At Me, Bro. You send me questions, I answer them. Let's hit it. First question comes from Average Joe's Fantasy Football and says, Brian Antoine coming back for Villanova make them title contenders now. You know, I would be surprised if Brian Antoine has a major role for Villanova. You're looking at a young man right now who has not played meaningful minutes in basketball in a number of years. I think anything you get from Brian Antoine is gravy. Next question. Derek Zederson says, if Belmont wins out in the OVC tournament, what seed do you have them at, and what is a realistic chance for them to win a game or two in March? I think they're a potential mid-major sleeper. I think, they could maybe be as high as an 11 seed. Remember, as of right now, they only have one loss. But they're also in a situation where they haven't had a lot of opportunities to play games against power conference competition. But they've got veteran guard play with Grayson Murphy and Luke Smith. They also got Nick Muszynski inside, which is a very, very rare thing for a mid-major conference. They are a team that could pick somebody off in the NCAA tournament. Next up. Caleb Rosenblum wants to know who is the third best team in college basketball, assuming that Gonzaga and Baylor are the top two. I think you could make a number of different arguments here. You could say Michigan, you could say Ohio State, but based on what we saw at a Florida State last night against Virginia, who would argue against the Seminoles? Virginia, as of last night, came in allowing in ACC play just under 60 points per game against their competition. The Seminoles put up 81 against the Cavaliers and shot over 50% from the field and 50 from three. That was impressive. Next question. Michael Sorensen wants to know, what is BYU's ceiling and floor in terms of seeding for the NCAA tournament? Do they have a shot to reach the Sweet 16? Everybody's got a shot. BYU, to me, looks cemented anywhere from a 7 to a 10 seed. And this is not cliche. It all depends on the matchups for the NCAA tournament. But this team, remember, has a power conference win against St. John's and also won on the road at San Diego State earlier this season. Next question. Number one, Fran Brady wants to know, is it time for South Carolina to move on from Frank Martin? I don't think you can move on from somebody who led you to your only Final Four in school history. I expected South Carolina to be better this year. I think part of it, and this is not an excuse, it's just the way of the times with the pandemic, is South Carolina has had multiple pauses due to COVID-19. Next up. Chris Hagan wants to know, how does Maryland need to finish the season to make the tournament? Just keep playing like you did the other night against Minnesota. You know, one of the things I noticed is that aside from a really bad game a couple of weeks ago against Penn State, Aaron Wiggins has finally emerged from Maryland into a consensus go-to player, but a dangerous couple of games coming up in College Park the next 2 days against Nebraska. Nebraska won at Penn State on Sunday, which Maryland couldn't do a couple weeks ago, and also took Illinois to overtime Friday night in Lincoln. Next up. This is from EP, and he wants to know, when can I sleep, John? EP, you know the answer to that. We sleep in May. Now let's get to our news and nuggets portion of stuff with Jon Rothstein. Gonna nobble on a carrot here. Always delightful. Okay. I'm chewing. Hold on. Carrot always gets stuck in your teeth, too. Okay. How can we have a conversation about who the National Coach of the Year is right now without including Kelvin Sampson? Houston 17-2. They lost the American Athletic Conference preseason player of the year in Caleb Mills, who opted to transfer. They lost their projected starting power forward Fabian White to an injury. He hasn't played this season. And Houston 17-2, and per the bracket reveal last Saturday on CBS, was still a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Any conversation for a National Coach of the Year has to include Kelvin Sampson. 2 teams that I think will be underseeded in the NCAA tournament and could be very dangerous, LSU and Oregon. These 2 teams are starting to hit their stride. LSU had a huge win on Saturday against Tennessee as top 25, top 20 caliber talent. And another thing that I want to point out, which is interesting as you start to think about the NCAA tournament, it's been approximately 80 days since Gonzaga has played a single-digit game this season. The only single-digit game that Gonzaga has played is a 5-point win against West Virginia in the Jimmy V Classic in early December. Jalen Suggs played limited minutes that game, not as much as usual, because of a nagging injury in the first half. The Zags have not been in a possession game since early December. I'm curious to see how that will affect them coming up down the home stretch here. They did obviously get a little bit of a test a couple weeks ago at Pacific, but wound up winning the game by 18 points. All right, some games to watch later today. Providence at UConn. James Bouknight again cleared to play for the Huskies. We talked about that at the top of the show. Another big bubble game in the Big East. Xavier goes to Queens to take on St. John's. Xavier has beaten St. John's in 11 straight meetings. The last time that St. John's beat Xavier was February 2015 when Steve Lavin was the coach. And then an intriguing game in the SEC as Florida, who has had their last couple of games postponed, goes to Arkansas. Eric Musselman has done a very good job in his second season at Arkansas. The Razorbacks have won 6 of 7, which was highlighted by that big win against Missouri over the weekend. We are inching closer to Selection Sunday. We are inching closer to the best stretch of the year, a portion of the year that we were deprived of last season. And we are going to give you everything you need for this year's NCAA tournament each and every week right here from soup to nuts. Because remember, just like I talked about last year, you can't control what happens to you in life. You can control what you respond. And we are going to have an NCAA tournament that you can really take a bite out of. Got a bone. Remember, in the airport of life, college basketball is the Delta Sky Club. Stay positive, test negative. This is only February.